Good evening and welcome to tonight's edition of Fact Sheet live on ETV, live on NISIM 95.9 and 100.1, also live on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. You're welcome to tonight's edition of the show. Here, you know, if it's not the facts, we don't discuss them. Just a week ago, we were here having a conversation about the budget, attempting with my guest to preempt the direction the finance minister would likely choose, whether to go the path of fiscal consolidation or spend to propel the economy to be active, so the relief we are all looking for would be here. The finance minister made the budget presentation as he is constitutionally mandated to do. A few things came up, of which I know one of the most discussed has to do with the toll booths and the withdrawal of the services of the people manning the toll booths and the cancellation of it in its entirety. The issues to do with Parliament, we will leave it with them as to whether the minister was wrong or right. We'll leave it to Parliament. But our focus is on the other matter of the levy that is on the Momo transactions, which you'll be doing from the 1st of January if the budget receives approval. Several views have been expressed on that. Some say that it has the potential of discouraging people from utilizing the service in the first place. Some say it also has the potential of allowing for government to meet its revenue target. Of course, we know the government is, targeting around over 100 billion Ghana cedis as its revenue target. The government is also seeking to spend somewhere around 135 billion Ghana cedis as well. So it leaves a deficit of around maybe 7.1234 thereabout. And so tonight, we will try to understand the issues therein within the budget. If you remember, before the budget reading, our focus was on whether the government was going to heed the calls by the driver unions for them to reduce the taxes on petroleum products we buy at the pump. Reading the budget and listening to the finance minister, that did not happen. We're asking, would there be the imposition of new taxes or would there be the removal of some of these taxes? Finance minister finished reading the budget. The toll levy that we used to pay is no more, but now we are going to pay more levy. The benchmark value which the importers and exporters, Guta & Co., AGI & Co., had been advocating for it to stay, finance minister says requires a review as to whether the review amounts to a total removal of the 30% and 50% benchmark value is another matter for discussion. But tonight, we will try to understand how the finance minister is going to meet the target of over 100 billion if, for instance, it's projecting that the agri sector is going to grow by about 5.3 from 4.9, and industry around 6.3. And then services sector, which had been doing so well in 2021, is going to, not grow, but rather diminish from 8.3 to somewhere around 5.6%. Now, we take a look at our debt portfolio, which is around 341 million at the moment, billion, sorry, at the moment. And so we ask ourselves, how do we service this debt? From all indications, the finance minister is looking internally to raise his revenue, considering that the external sources for some of these money to fund our projects now it's become a bit of a challenge, seeing how fragile our economy may be said to be. And so tonight we'll look at all these factors, all these areas where the government is going to spend, the areas the government is putting his money, and whether it's going to, be a catalyst enough for there to be growth in the economy. That's our focus tonight on Fact Sheet. I encourage you to stay with us as we look at the variables in the budget as presented by the finance minister. My name is Samuel Ishen. ETV, my name is Samuel Ishen, welcoming you to the conversation again live on Facebook. The handle is ETV Ghana, also live on NISIM 95.9 and 100.1. We encourage you to join the conversation with your thoughts, your views, and your comments on the budget as presented by the finance minister Ken Ofori Atta. My guest is in the studio with me, Mr. Emmanuel Amwadakwa, who is an economist and partner at CCAT Global. And I started a conversation with him last week. We're trying to wrap our minds around and forecast what the finance minister was likely to say. Sure. And so far, he's done so. The last time we were here, you forecasted that he was going to go the path of fiscal consolidation.
Definitely.
And so far, that seems to be the direction that the finance minister is going.
And it was also part of the theme for the budget.
Yeah.
Yes. So, based on where we are. But let me say, before even I comment, a very good evening to our wonderful viewers. Yeah, because of where we are as a country, we needed to go on that path, but also tread cautiously. When an economy is in contraction, you would want to, stimulate it by making a lot of investment and increasing expenditure. But at the back of it, with our case, we also have a balloon debt. So you have to tread cautiously the policy options you go for. In as much as you want to raise revenue, you also have to look at the expenditure so that we'll be able to go towards the part of fiscal consolidation as has been presented by the minister.
It's interesting these points that sometimes you economists make about the debt to GDP and why we should be careful about the debt to GDP ratio and our ballooning debt stock.
Yeah.
But there are those who also advance the argument that the debt to GDP ratio must not be a matter of concern for us. If indeed we are prioritizing our expenditure and it's going into areas that are able to generate revenue for us to service some of these borrowings that would have done. So why then do we concern ourselves so much with the debt to...
We should be concerned. Debt in itself is not bad. Any country, a lot of countries run budget deficit, and deficit translates into your public debt. The reason why you want to go and borrow is that your expenditure is more than your revenue, so you have to go and borrow. But if you borrow, where are you using the funds for? And data shows that we unfortunately have been using a lot of borrowings for recurrent expenditure instead of capital expenditure, which is supposed to stimulate growth in various sectors of the economy. That is why sometimes we are worried. But debt to GDP ratio is not the only yardstick we look at. You also look at your debt to revenue, your debt to exports. You make these comparisons for you to know that indeed you are borrowing. And as compared to these macroeconomic indicators, when the time is due for you to pay, will you be able to pay? But as we see, for 2 years in a row, if you look at the expenditure allocation, interest rate is leading. That is why it's a source of worry. Last year, interest payment was leading expenditure allocation. This year, interest payment is leading expenditure allocation, even above compensation to government employees. This year, government has projected to use about 37 billion to pay for interest, as against 35 billion for compensation to workers. But unfortunately, capital expenditure, which we need the most, if you look at a country like Ghana, developing country, we want to stimulate growth. We are spending now, or we have projected to spend 16 billion. So if you look at these expenditure allocations, then it becomes worrying if your debt levels are going high. That is why government must look at fiscal consolidation, mobilize a lot of revenue internally so that we don't jeopardize the medium-term prospects of our country on the altar of public debt and its accompanying a high interest rate.
Let's try and balance the books for the finance minister. First on our minds is the issue about revenue targets set for the year.
Yeah.
Consistently, these targets, when they are set, we fall short of these targets.
Yeah.
And so the target set for 2022,
how
feasible is it for us to get that? Seeing that, one, the toll booth levy, or whatever we used to call it, charges or whatever, is being removed. That's almost about 80 million Ghana cedis annually. That's gone. Then again, the source where government intends to rake in a lot more revenue, which has to do with this Momo levy, is being resisted vehemently by Ghanaians.
Definitely.
And the minority as well. That's how feasible is that revenue target set?
The finance minister has projected that we're going to raise about 100 billion Ghana cedis. and our expenditure on the other side is 137. So we have a budget deficit of 37 billion. I must, before even I go on to answer your question, say that government's budget deficit for 2022 is expected to trend downwards from 41 billion in this year to 37 billion next year, God willing. And so that is an indication that government is committed to fiscal consolidation. And it is also in line with our Fiscal Responsibility Act. The law says that you should be able to do less than 5% to GDP in terms of your budget deficit. But we are in double digits now as we speak. And so government is committed to moving budget deficit from double digits to single digit in 2022 at 7.4%. So that indication, I must say that we have to commend government on it. If you look at the revenue measures government has said for this year, key is e-levy, which is 1.75% on electronic transactions, and it's supposed to rake in more than 6 billion to our revenue basket. That is what government has projected. The second one is increase in fees and charges by 15%. So it means that all fees and charges charged by government is going to see an upward increment of 15%. And even up from 2022, we are going to adjust it to inflation, figures, annual inflation figures. And so government envisages to raise a lot of revenue. The elephant in the room for me is tax exemptions. We are losing about 5% to GDP to our through tax exemptions. And so I expect that as fast as possible, the bill be laid in Parliament. But in as much as we want to, curb, the losses we are making on that side, I think we'll be able to raise the needed revenue we are projecting. As I speak to you now, tax revenue to GDP as a country, we are doing around 12%. Total tax to revenue and grants next year, we are projecting 20% from this year's figure of 16%. And so that 4% projection, we hope to show up through these revenue measures that government has, made. But more importantly, in as much as we talk about the revenue, we have to talk about the expenditure. Government must be committed to cutting down unnecessary expenditure. And so you should be able to see that some of the programs, some of the budgetary allocations to some institutions, or even office of the government machinery, we have to look at how best we can cut down on such costs. And more importantly, look at how much we can, curb corruption and illicit financial flow. For me, I always say that the fight against corruption, it should be an economic decision, because we are losing in excess of 3 billion annually through corruption. That is what we are being told. And so if you want to rake in more revenue, that is even half of the Momo levy we are envisaging to raise in 2022. That is how we have to think about illicit financial flow and then corruption, so that we'll be able to curb the ballooning budget deficit and then public debt.
We will stay a little bit longer on the revenue and expenditure bits, because that's where the basics of the conversation lies.
Yeah.
But this morning I got wind, or I heard about the adjustment of the monetary policy rate from 13.5 to 14.5.
Yeah.
And I was asking myself the impact that is going to have on the budget as has been read by the finance minister. Because over the years, when there's been a consistent reduction in the monetary policy rate, we haven't really seen it translate into the kind of interest that people pay at the banks.
Yeah.
And so if it moves from 13.5 to 14.5 with the intent by government that it wants to check inflation, then what happens to businesses who already are borrowing at an exorbitant rate? What happens to them?
Fantastic. The Bank of Ghana has the mandate to control price stability in the economy. And one of the tools they use in controlling it is the monetary policy rate. And so one of the critical macroeconomic indicators they look at in setting monetary policy rate is inflation. Unfortunately, for the past 5 months, consecutively, inflation rate has been going up. And the month of October 2021, inflation rate reached 11%, which is even higher than our medium-term target of 8% plus or minus 2. Ghana runs what we call an inflation targeting regime. And so the Bank of Ghana will set a target that this is our ideal inflation rate we want to achieve in the medium term. and so we work towards it. But we have seen that prices of goods and services, according to our CPI, which is being generated by Ghana Statistical Service, that it has been going up consistently for the past 5 months, and we are in double digits now. And so they look at that figure and they'll have to adjust the monetary policy rate to suit the current macroeconomic indicators. Its immediate impact is that we are going to see a slight upward adjustment of prices or the cost of credit on the market, and that is what it really translates into. Already we are talking about a lending rate averaging around 20% as we talk now, and so if the monetary policy rate is trending upward again, then cost of credit will likely go up. Now, the Bank of Ghana uses what we call the Ghana reference rate, and it's an amalgamation of money market variables, and then including, treasury bill and the monetary policy rate. Once these, indicators are going up, it means that, monetary policy rate will go up, which will obviously affect the, cost of credit on the market.
So then, if you would help me understand.
Yeah.
The obvious is that if I am borrowing at 20%, let's say at the bank, and then now it's gone to 14.5, the bank is also in the business to make profit.
Yeah.
And so if I go and borrow, let's say I'm a car dealer, and then I'm going to borrow some maybe 100,000 or let's say 200,000 to clear my cars from the port. The loan goes up in terms of the interest component. And then when I get to the port too, per the statement read by the finance minister, the benchmark value, which was also there, the 30% which is also being reviewed. And so a car which would come into the country and would have cost maybe 30,000, now would be around 35, 40,000. So then I think about the guy who is going to buy it for Uber, the guy who is going to buy it for Bolt. How does he then buy this car, use it for business, without also not having the intent of transferring the cost to we?
Yeah, great question. And what I've seen, I have worked in a bank before, and normally when there's an adjustment, they write to their, their debtors that this is what, the Bank of Ghana is saying, so there's going to be an adjustment. But it depends on the kind of loan you have gone for from the bank.
Retrospectively?
Come again?
I mean, the client who has borrowed from the bank.
Sometimes, so if it is 100 basis points, they will add it to your loan, but it depends on the kind of loan you have contracted. And it also depends on the bank. And so I won't be able to speak for all banks, but some banks would want to immediately tell you that there's been a 100 basis point increment, so we are also going to add it going forward. But some banks, depending on the kind of loan, as I have said, and looking at the benchmark value that have been reduced, it means that prices of goods and services, imported goods and services, in the short term will see an upward, increment. But for me, the argument should be import duty is not the only cost component at our port. Let us have a holistic, conversation about the various cost components and quote and unquote non-cost components on our at our port. Why is Ghana's port uncompetitive? If you look at the volumes of cargo coming into Ghana's port as compared to Lomé or Abidjan, the data shows that they are recording a lot of container volumes. But we are also seeing that is why the government had to bring this benchmark valuation. But even the question about benchmark valuation, some freight forwarders will question it. If I'm bringing a good in, I'm telling you that I bought it at 100 cedis. You tell me that no, this good is more than 100 cedis, so I'm using my price to value that good. That is even questionable. But be as it may, I believe that we have to have a holistic conversation about the cost component at our port to make us competitive, because we are in a competitive business. Somebody is also coming to West Africa to do business, might want to clear the goods through Ghana port because of maybe the low volumes, the low cost that he's going to pay here. So I think that we have to have a holistic, conversation about the various cost components and non-cost components, and more importantly, our agenda for industrialization. When you set a benchmark value and reducing general prices by 50% in terms of a discount, what happens to those who are producing the very goods that you are giving 50% discount on? It means that they will become very uncompetitive. And we have seen calls from, let's say, palm oil producers that because of benchmark valuation, their prices of goods as compared to the price of oil coming from, outside of our country is very uncompetitive, and they are not able to compete with them. So I believe it's a conversation that we have to have. In as much as we want to reduce benchmark value, what is our industrialization agenda so that we will be able to have a market, a local economy that is able to produce the goods we need. If you look at the list on that benchmark value, toothpick and all, toiletries, these are very things that as a people we should be able to produce, because no country has developed in importing almost everything that is a basic need we need. And that is why I believe that in as much as you have scrapped benchmark values, look at the industrialization policies. How can Ghanaian businesses be effective in producing the very things we need here so that we'll be able to have a very buoyant economy?
Let me quote a page from the presentation by the finance minister.
Great.
On the aspect of supportive policy measures. Inclusive is what we are discussing.
Yeah.
It says, Mr. Speaker, government is therefore proposing for the consideration and approval of the House fiscal policy measures to underpin the 2022 budget and to support the fiscal consolidation and growth agenda. The full details of these fiscal policy measures are presented below. The list of the policies includes the following. 1. Approval for implementation the revised exemption bill, which you spoke about.
Definitely.
Implementation of the Unified Common Platform for Property Rate Administration with effect from January 1st, 2022, subject to review every 5 years.
Yeah.
Then, restoration of the benchmark values of imports by suspending the 50% discount on selected general goods and the 30% discount on vehicles, which we are discussing. Impose an electronic transaction levy, a transaction levy of 1.75% on the value of digital transaction, and exempt daily transactions of the, which is the general one we are all talking about.
Sure.
Zero rate tolls that remove toll charges on all public roads and reassign the current workforce collecting road tolls effective immediately. The budget is approved by Parliament so that they do not become any worse off because of the policy. Review fees and charges with an average increase of 15% in 2022 and thereafter subjected to automatic annual adjustments by, okay, it goes on and on and on. And on. So all these measures have a trickle-down effect of impacting on prices of goods and services.
Definitely.
And so then I try to then understand how it is possible that, for instance, the monetary policy rate, the intent is to check inflation. But all these measures have the potential of influencing that. So then, how do we play it?
Well, it's
Because
not all of them.
It's not all of them.
Yeah.
Okay.
For instance, as a fiscal measure, government wants to raise in a lot of money from property tax. So let's have a common platform. So at the district level, at the metropolitan, municipal, and district level, we have a common platform of raking in, revenue through property tax. I think, that one we want to rake in a lot of revenue. But if you look at, the
Ghana,
inflation bit, you see.
But Ghana.
Yeah.
The moment, for instance, and normally when we are thinking about property rate, we are thinking about you and I who may own a house.
Yeah.
But let's think about the guy who has built 2-bedroom apartments.
Okay.
For rental.
Yeah.
And the property rate, the new regime comes in, and maybe the rates are high. Obviously, he's going to pass it on to the tenants.
Definitely.
That's the system we run.
Yeah. Yeah. So you are talking about its impact on the cost of goods and services on the market. Definitely. So, e-levy, 1.75%, if it is passed, it means that our disposable income will reduce and we are paying a tax on it. So how much we will have to spend will reduce. Definitely, no two ways about it. Fees and charges, if I want to contract any government service or good, maybe I'll have to also increase it up to. Yeah, it has the tendency to, increase inflation. But you look at the inflation basket and you look at whether food or non-food, what can we do about it? And for me, the analysis should be, why are we having conservative increment in, inflation rate? key of them is transportation, which virtually affects everything. Transportation is being fueled by petroleum prices. And petroleum prices, I checked when we were coming, 6.9 something for a liter. Oh, you understand? So
Yeah.
what can government do about it? Three main components affect petroleum prices. The price on the world markets, taxation, and then the third thing we'll look at the exchange rate. Our exchange rate not doing too well. Dollar is around 6 CD to a dollar. So you will see that it will increase because they are bringing it to Ghana. They are using dollar. They are changing Ghana CD to dollar.
Yeah.
But what we can do something about will be the tax component on our petroleum prices. And that is why government has started suspending price stabilization and all that. But I think some of these taxes can go so that we reduce the burden that is coming from the side of petroleum pricing that is affecting transportation, which is also feeding into the high cost of goods and services, hence the increment in inflation rates as we see on the market now.
There are those who hold a view that this old Momo levy has the potential of dampening the entire digitalization drive by government, that people who otherwise would have been sending, let's say, 5,000, 1,000 Ghana cedis via Momo, now would hesitate or hasten slowly in doing that transaction, considering the cost element of sending that amount of money. Is that theory anything to go by?
Well, to some extent, but per government's communication, they had to do a research, and the research shows that less than about 40% of transactions are less than 100 cedis in a day. And they think that people sending less than 100 cedis, they are quote and unquote the poor. And so we are not going to touch that bracket, but we are going to touch brackets that are higher. But we have to look at it again. I think that government has not got a very stand position. I think we can talk to government about how to, if you want to enter this market, I think 1.75 personally is on the higher side. Government could have started from, let's say, less than 1% and see the responsiveness. It is about elasticity. If I increase price, if I put a levy on mobile money transactions, how will people respond to it? The 2020 data has it that about 500 billion Ghana cedis were transacted on Momo just last year. And we have to look at the trend analysis. Let's say in the past 10 years that we had Momo in the system, how people have responded to using mobile. And I'm not privy to the entire data government relied on in levying this 1.75%. But personally, from where I sit, maybe it has a tendency to affect the cash-like society we want to have. And bear in mind that even per the Bank of Ghana report, the money we are using to print our Ghana cedi, it is going up by the day. And so government is also mindful about that. But for me, I think government, the amount or the ceiling he has started from, I think is too much. 1.75. If you are starting, do less than 1%. Let's see the responsiveness in the medium term. Then you can adjust it. But the big elephant in the room is that we are not mobilizing a lot of revenue. We have about 2.3 million people paying taxes out of a labor population of 12.9 million. How it's a difficult job to do, but how do we start small? We start from one angle and progressively be able to widen the tax net. This is an option to widen the tax net, but the pros and the cons are attached to it. But I believe that the difficult question is, how do we get the mason or the plumber who comes to do work and we pay them with cash, they never file tax returns? How do we get all these people to pay? There are some people who are doing some jobs that you not respect. You sit in the office, you are taking their tax on your salary, they earn triple than what you earn in a month. And that is the difficult thing we have to, start working on. How can we get the Kube seller to pay income tax? How can we get the bean seller? How can we get those in the informal sector to get to contribute their quota to the tax?
But don't they have these levies?
No,
the
it's not at the assembly level.
Yes.
But that's not taxing itself. When you get your salary as a worker at this station, there's a component you pay as your personal income tax. but they don't file taxes. Sometimes the assembly will come to them for, let's say, their market tools or whatever, but that's not tax. It's not on their income. You understand? So I believe that the difficult job is how do we get them to pay their fair share to the, to the revenue generating basket. Other than that, I think the revenue mobilization drive.
If the word is tax,
yeah,
and then the other word is toll,
yeah,
and you're looking for money from the people,
yeah,
and then if you're using the word tax, it's becoming difficult for you to get them to tax them. So then increase your tolls. After all, if it comes to the assembly, it is virtually with the government.
mm-hmm.
So if indeed, and so sometimes I ask myself, why really is it difficult for us to tax the informal sector or collect money from them, as we always say?
Yeah.
Yes, because the assemblies go to the market all the time.
Yeah.
They are collecting some money from them.
Yeah.
So if government feels that, look, if we collect 50 pesos or 1 cedi from them every day,
yeah,
for their services that they are rendering or whatever job they are doing there, okay, it's proving difficult for you to get you on a formal platform.
yeah.
So then, pay 3 cedis to come and do business at that point.
Well, no, for me, to my understanding, classic tax, that is not what it is. Let's say I put my my wares in a market and they will come around to get some money from me because I am using a space in the market. The space was constructed by the district assembly, and so they are taking something from you. But that is not charged against their income that they are making.
But it is money that you are taking.
It's money.
Yes, it is money that you are taking.
Yeah,
at the end of the day.
I get it. It's money. But we are talking about tax in its real term as tax on your income. Even though they pay indirect taxes, when they buy a bottle of water, there's a tax component with that. So that one, everybody pays indirect tax. But we're talking about direct taxes, payment on their income as they earn. And that is all what we've not done a lot of work to, bring all those people, even professionals. That is why you hear calls from the presidency at the Bar Association that people get gigs and they are not paying. These are professionals. Ghana Medical Association, they are getting gigs, but they are not paying. So they are saying that, government is saying that from next year, for your license to be renewed, you have to be filing your taxes, even at that professional level. Mm-hmm. And so it means that we have a lot of work to do for all of us to contribute to our quota, because as the minister will put it, these 2.3 million people are carrying the burden of the whole country. About 30.8 million people as we have it per the Population and Housing Census report.
Well, if you just join us, you're live on ETV and we're discussing the 2022 budget. Your thoughts, your views are very much welcome. Today we'll try as much as possible to incorporate some of your views and comments that you're sharing with us. And so you can just simply go to Facebook and look for ETV Ghana and also look for Happy 989 FM. You'll find the show going on live at ETV Ghana. And if you have any question, if you have any comment, any view at all that you want to express, you can use that medium. And when we come back from the commercial break, we will try and then read these comments and then attempt to answer these questions if they are, or analyze your comments if you send them through to us. But when we are back, we are focusing on the performance of key areas: the agri sector, industry, mining, and then the services industry, as per the projections of the finance minister as to how they see growth would be for these areas and its likely impact on the projections that have been made by the finance minister. We'll be right back. You're welcome back to Fact Sheets live on ETV, live on NISIM 95.9. Let me try and get a few text messages that we have gotten and then see and gauge the mood of Ghanaians when it comes to the budget as has been read by the finance minister. Equally, can you send us your comments through our WhatsApp line 0202222 054 0202222 and your comments would get to us and we would go through them. This one from Baba Mara Says your sound is poor here in Sierra Leone, but I am in love with your program. Thank you very much. This one from Abbas Gidan Go. Abbas says, I am loving your discussion tonight. Let me read some others on WhatsApp as well that have come through. This one says, I'm enjoying the conversation. You guys are not just talking about the usual Momo tax, and toll booth, but you're really looking at the issues and its impact on Ghanaians. Kudos. That's from Michael. This one from, I hope I get the pronunciation of your name right, but it's from Ibrahim Zuraj. Okay, so he says that, I want you to explain to me, so if the government is spending so much more on amortization and then on salaries, how then do we get out of this cycle? Well, that's your question that you're sending through, and I believe you can help me with that. Then this one from AC says, Sami, good questions you're asking your guest, and he's also on top of his game. I'm enjoying the conversation, not the usual. Thank you for educating us. And a few others that have come through. We have 15 more minutes until the point about, the time goes fast there.
Very fast.
Yes.
I can't so soon.
The point about it being cyclical.
Yeah.
That we borrow to consume. We borrow to. At what point does it end?
It ends at a point where government is using the borrowing for capital expenditure, so that the borrowings will be able to take care of itself, quote and unquote. So if you borrow and you build a gas pipeline or a refinery, the refinery will be able to cater for itself, and so you'll be able to pay the loans when the time is due. But when you borrow and use it for consumption, when the time is due for you to amortize, it becomes a problem. And Ghana from 2007, the first time we went on a Eurobond market, borrowing about 750 million, it became like an economic policy for us to be going on the international market to borrow at very competitive, high commercial loans, sometimes at 7%, at 8%, at 9%. I even remember at a point it breached 10%. Just this year, the beginning of the year, we borrowed $3.025 billion on the Eurobond market. Government is saying that in 2022, we're also going to go on the market to raise about 750 million. At what point will it end? It will end when we mobilize a lot of revenue domestically. So you reduce your budget deficit. Once the budget deficit is reduced, you reduce the level of debt that you put on your books. But as we have it now, the kind of debt we have to look at how best we amortize. But it has to be amortized through when the economy is growing. When it is not growing, you are not getting any debt revenue. Because if you look at the two expenditure items I have said, compensation and then interest payment, it's consuming a lot of our revenues. Goods and services, I've not even mentioned that. That one is around 28 billion Ghana cedis. And so where will the investment be? These are consumption. But for investment, only 16 billion. That is why the cycle must change.
But are we not always being told that, there was oversubscription of our bond? And so we hail ourselves that there seems to be some sort of confidence in the economy until people are subscribing to our bonds.
Well, interest rates are trending even below 5% elsewhere. And so when they are bringing their money here and you are giving them more than 5%, it will be oversubscribed. So oversubscription, yes, to a large extent will mean that, okay, your economy is doing well, investors have confidence. But you should also know that people have money that they want a place to invest their money. So they will bring it there. There will be oversubscription. But not to hail yourself that is because of the oversubscription. So you are doing extraordinary well. But I think the key point is for us to mobilize more, reduce the cost of, credit, both domestic and, external. And let me tell you this. In the 2022 budget, if you look at domestic 2021 budget, even as the government reported on 2021 up to September figures, domestic financing, we projected to borrow about 14 billion up to September, but we borrowed 20.3 billion. What it means is that government is actively on the domestic market, competing with credit from the private sector. And so why will interest rate go down? Government is risk-free. Why would the bank lend to an individual or a corporation whereby your risk levels and the risk premium is so high? So I think this narrative must change so that when government is borrowing, whether domestic or external, the consequences are so high. But the solution lies in generate more so that cut down on necessary expenditure so that you don't have to borrow more.
One would have thought that, the industrialization drive of the government, one district, one factory, the planting for food and jobs, which is supposed to be, linked to it to feed some of these industries, would spearhead the agenda of growth locally. But if you look at the government's projections in terms of the growth expectations for the various areas, one which got me a bit concerned is the services industry, which has been doing extremely well. But now we are being told that from 2021, where it was going around 8.3, it is declining to somewhere around 5.6. So then what happens to our revenue generation targets? Agric would increase from 4.9 to somewhere around 5.3. You're talking about industry growing around 6.3 thereabout. So the service industry, which was doing so well, we are being told may shrink.
There are reasons why government is projecting that the services sector might not be doing well. On top of my mind, not anything I can think of now, but per the report that the Bank of Ghana just released, we are writing up, the banks are writing off a couple of non-performing loans. Maybe, but I've not been able to interrogate the figure. It was just released just this evening. But there might be reasons why government is saying that the services sector might not perform as we are seeing. But for me, if you look at the sectorial analysis of Ghana's economy, agri, manufacturing, and then services, where we should be able to focus our attention is in agri and manufacturing, because these two sectors have the growth potential and they also have the ability to lift a lot of people out of poverty. If you look at the service economy that has led growth in the past decade, how many Ghanaians have benefited from the services sector? It is a sector, banking, ICT, insurance, largely owned by foreigners, but not Ghanaians. But where Ghanaians have ownership, that sector is not doing well. That is why, for me, in terms of policies that will spur growth, we should be able to look at those sectors, agric and then industry. How do we reduce the risk in agric? For me, that is number one. We are we are doing a lot of rain-fed agric, and government says that I'm doing one village, one dam. Let's be able to ask the questions: how many dams have we been able to, construct? How many hectares of lands are under irrigation as we speak now? So once the risk level is reduced at the agric sector, I think that it will be able to generate a lot of revenue for us, because Ghana, in normal transition of economies, it moves from agric to manufacturing, then to services. But what we are seeing now in Ghana is that we are mimicking a service economy, but it's not a service economy. We should focus on agric and manufacturing, so that we'll be able to deliver a lot of development for our people.
Well, for want of time, let me just, if you look at the appendix of the budget, if you look at Appendix 6, which talks about the cost of government flagship programs, that's where government intends to put its money. You would expect that the areas where there is the capacity for regeneration of revenue, the focus there, the money that is being pumped to those areas are rather scanty. But the areas that are for consumption, that's where you find a lot of budgetary allocation. Why
so
is that?
Also on top of it, you can look at Free SHA's budget. I think that's the highest on the appendix, right? But the big question is, in as much as we want to invest in human capital, let's look at the cost component of free SHS. Can we as a country be thinking about the cost component? But government has a very staunch position about free SHS. Like if you talk about free SHS, Charlie, you know, I was
they are coming for you.
I was in the forum this morning by PwC, and somebody also made that same comment. Why don't you look at the cost component? We are doing boarding, we are doing feeding. Why don't you look at the cost component so that we let parents also benefit from it? But for me, we have to look at rationalization of the expenditure in certain flagship programs so that we'll be able to reap the benefits thereof. Free SHS is good. Is it time for us to review the policy? For me, it is yes. And a lot of funding is coming from our oil revenue. And let's know that oil revenue, they are non-renewable resources. And once the oil is finished, how are you going to fund free SHS? That is why we have to start thinking about how we are funding such flagship programs. For me,
I mean, it's interesting.
Yeah.
You know, you look at it, and Office of Government Machinery, some 1.9 billion is going there.
Yeah.
If you look at a key industry like the Ministry of Trade and Industry, some 231 million is what is going there.
It tells
Trade and Industry.
Yeah.
Then you look at the Ministry of Food and Agriculture, at least they get some 614 million is there. Then again, you look at the Ministry of Water Resources and Sanitation. Okay, that one has to do with our health. But roads and highways, they get a lot.
Yeah.
Railways get some 216.
Yeah.
And for me, that's where it always bothers me. Because, look, the major cutting process we use in this country now is by road.
Yeah. More than 90-something percent.
You would expect that, you know, a bulk of that will go through our rail system. So it eases the pressure on our roads. Yeah. The roads that get spoiled quickly because of the heavy load that's on the road, the traffic situation on our roads, the breakdowns and the accidents on our roads. It's also a result of these heavy, you know, trucks on the system. But look at the allocation.
Budgetary allocation.
To look at transport. Transport gets 77 million. Yeah. Meanwhile, it would have been much more prudent for government to allocate more for the rapid, you know, bus system, so that even as petroleum prices are going up, you and I can decide to park our cars and join the public transport.
Definitely. You have a good point. But for me, government must show commitment in protecting our purse through the allocation it makes to some of these agencies. So you cut the budget for Office of Government Machinery. And these are consumption expenditures going on there. So I believe that maybe some of them are capital expenditure, but for me, we should focus on where we'll be able to generate the needed revenue so that, you know, as a country, we don't have to be going borrowing.
Well, we have just about some 4 minutes before we end the conversation. And I would ask my final one, if you can help me out. The budget deficit of about 7.4
to GDP,
You think we can achieve that from 11 point something?
It's doable, but it depends on how our revenues will perform. 100 billion in terms of target, and then 137 in terms of expenditure target. But we also be able to look at this year what we have been able to achieve so far. Per the current data we have, we've not achieved our revenue target as at the end of September. We projected to raise 51 billion, but we were able to raise 47 billion. So there is a budget deficit gap, or there is a gap of about 4 billion that we couldn't raise. But in the same way, expenditure, government was able to also tone down in that, so that we will be able to achieve our budget deficit target. I think the commitment to reduce budget deficit from 41 billion in this year to 37 billion, I think it's a commitment enough that government is ready to go on the line of fiscal consolidation. But it all depends on how our revenue will fare. as against our expenditure. For me, some expenditures, we have to look at it. In as much as we talk about raising revenue, let's start asking questions about how the revenues are being used prudently. And if there are some cuts we have to do, we have to cut. Because government can show commitment by saying that, okay, that we used to see that when government is going for a program or a minister is going for a program, 10 V8s, they are all drawing from the same state. Now it is going to reduce, let's say 2 or 1. Then the people will see that government wants us to cushion ourselves because we are not in normal time. Government is also showing commitment. And I believe that this is a great time for government to show commitment that they want to reduce the excessive expenditure so that the people will believe that, okay, we want to raise revenue. I'm bringing e-levy 1.7 because they see that there is prudent use of our resources. They are happy to contribute their quota in developing our country.
Well, we would end it here and call it a night.
Yeah.
But I believe that for those of you who follow the conversation, at least you picked 1 or 2 from the conversation. Yeah. And I'm hoping that at the end of the day, if government officials follow the conversation, they, as much as they are going the path of fiscal consolidation, they should also tighten their belts.
Definitely.
So that if we are paying and we know that we are all in the same boat, it becomes easy for us to go the path that government wants us to go. But all in all, would like to thank you for being a part of our discussion tonight. Interesting comments are coming through, but unfortunately, our time is up tonight. Yeah. But I'd like to thank everybody for being a part of the conversation tonight. I am sure, God willing, tomorrow we'll be here again. And tomorrow morning, we'll have in the studio Captain Prince Kofi Amwabin, retired, founder UT Bank, defunct. And we'll talk about himself, the vision for the bank that died, how he's feeling now, the book that he's written. So if you have any questions tomorrow, I encourage you to join us so that we would have the conversation. My guest tonight has been Emmanuel Amwa Dakwa, economist and then partner, CCAT Global. And we've been having a conversation on the budget. God willing, tomorrow we'll be here. Good morning. Good night. Yes, I was going to say good morning, but good night.